presumably just going to delete all of this, but hey, if there's anything we want to keep, we can.
Yeah. So, anyhow, you see, my name is AKA Joseph. So, I don't know if I've used my name on the other Discord before, but
No, I don't think so. Hi, Joseph.
Hello. And what may I call you?
Yes, I will go by Flashy Man or
Flashy Man. All right. Hello,
like.
Flashy Man.
Yeah. And how do you pronounce your username?
Good question. My username, I pronounce it Cakoluchiam.
Cakoluchiam.
Cakoluchiam. It's actually it's from a video game. It's from Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, and at the end of the game, pseudo spoiler alert, he tells the princess that that's his name because earlier in the game she had told him a story that her mother, I think, told her when she was young that that was a magic word that would open a door. And so at the end of the game, the whole timeline is reset, and then the prince goes to her and tells her the story, and then tells her the name, which sort of proves that that he knows her some other way than their current meeting. That is.
So his name isn't actually Cakoluchiam.
Yeah, he's an unnamed prince, and I don't remember if he actually has a name in the original Prince of Persia either, but I'm pretty sure he stays anonymous throughout the Sands of Time series, though I believe he does have a brother who gets a name, so I don't know. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I played those games. And they do not hold up, let me tell you. Or at least the first one. The first one does not hold up. Like, the story is great, but the gameplay is just so sticky and, like... If you've played the original Prince of Persia, have you?
No, I never have.
Okay, it was a side-scroller, and it was novel. It was unique because it was one of the first games to use rotoscoping. So they actually took video of a martial artist doing the cool fighting moves and the running and jumping, and then they sketched over it in order to make the sprites for the game. And so all these other games are like very pixelated, choppy movements, and then you've got this very flowy movements in the Prince of Persia. But yeah, but if you played it, like, you had to press that because it was rotoscoped, the animations being so smooth, there's like a wind up to the jump, and he has to crouch before he can jump. And so you can't do the jumping like you do in Mario, where you just immediately go off the ground. And so it's very difficult to time your jumps for this platforming game. And the first Sands of Time game, which is the 3D version that released on consoles in like 2003 or something, those ones felt similar. But yeah, so that's my name. How about you? Flashy Man, did your parents name you that?
Yes, well, of course I was Flashy Baby at the time. But no, I picked it. I used to be a guy who tried to come up with his own names for, everything, a unique username that could not be confused with anything else. And then at one point I got tired with my old username, and I thought, what do I want to be? Well, there's an album by Electric Six called Flashy. Electric Six is just a band that I happen to like, and the album cover for Electric Six is my icon. And
for the benefit of our listeners, that is sort of a phoenix with jet engines. Is that, or dragon with phoenix wings and jet engines?
It's always fun to hear someone try to describe what it is.
What do you see?
Well, if you look at it up close, you can see it's like a cat, dragon, jet engine, octopus, sort of in that order.
I wasn't going to comment on the tail because I figure that just, there are so many dragon type that have, various degrees of scaly and spikiness on the tail. But yeah, that's an octopus tentacle, you say.
Yeah, and I guess it's only a dragon. Like the wings are like angel wings. They're not really dragon wings. And it's also breathing fire and is in a red sky. It's just a very good piece of artwork.
It is a pretty cool piece of artwork, and I think it speaks to a personality, which I don't know if that's yours, but if that's what you want to convey, it has.
It's perhaps a bit ill-fitting because I'm not, I'm rarely doing anything as energetic as this dragon, nor even flashy, I am not a very flashy man, oddly enough. Oh, and then there's a song on the album called Flashy Man, which is it's a good song. It's not even my favorite song on the album, but it was a good name that I picked, even though other songs on the album have good names, and I prefer them. But I thought, hey, flashy picture, flashy man. It all goes together.
Flashy man. What genre is this music generally?
I guess you would call it rock. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like rock songs. They're sort of like, they're recent. They're more recent than like classic rock or whatever. And they're kind of strange, and some people find them funny. So
is that sort of strange and funny on the order of They Might Be Giants?
Yeah, but like rock.
Cool. Yeah, so some elements of just non sequitur or unreasonably abstract ideas, such as this cat with phoenix wings and jet engines and an octopus tail breathing fire.
Yeah. This cat, I believe this was just a painting that a different artist made, and then the band Electric Six saw and said, hey, can that be our album cover? And he said, yeah. And then they exchanged, money changed hands, and then there's this.
Cool.
So yeah. What do you want to talk about next?
I don't know. So I guess format is a thing that we need to eventually agree on. And ostensibly, we're going to be picking up your podcast. How do you feel about being a host and sort of leading? Or would you like to try to agree on terms before each episode, or, work out stuff together, share notes, or just interview type thing? What do you think?
Yeah. I think probably I should introduce us.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're probably going to know what we're up to a little bit better than me. And also, I might be tired of talking at that point, so I'll say, hey.
By the end of the introduction.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, this is going to be a very short podcast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We're just going to tell you the names of the chapters, and then
lovely.
Leave.
Yeah, I think that's a good first episode, though. Honestly speaking, that we should just go through the table of contents and see if we actually remember what happened in each of the chapters and can summarize it in like just a sentence for each one. Just based on the chapter titles. And if we can do that, then hopefully that reflects well on me for having picked appropriate chapter titles.
That's true. I guess
and if we can't do it, that's feedback.
That will be a bonus challenge for me because I did not read them in your format.
Oh, so
I've never seen the chapter titles before.
We each have something new for each other because you've read ahead now, which is actually that's kind of the format that these book club podcasts are traditionally composed of. One person who's read a lot of the story and one person who's encountering it along the way.
Yeah. Although I suppose that's usually just because, if one person hadn't read it, how would they know it was good enough? Case in point, this podcast that we're taking over for.
Yeah. So who are we taking over for? Let's just, pretend that we're actually making an episode and trying to get content in here that the listeners can understand. We have to, even if we're not recording this particular episode for that purpose, we should get in the mood of
practice.
Yeah, get in the practice, the habit of letting our listeners, pretending that our listeners know less about this whole thing than we do.
Sure, and they certainly will. However, after episode 1, where we tell them everything, that's all they get. Then they're just expected to know everything.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's actually something that that has confused me and a little bit bothered me about podcasts that are serialized, kind of like this one, is that it's just traditional for a lot of podcasts, mostly the talk show podcasts where you have a guest a week, for them to introduce the show and introduce the people and introduce the format and do a lot of introductions basically at the beginning of every episode, because there's always the possibility that somebody's going to be like, oh, I really like the topic they're talking about today. I'm going to share that with my friend. And if they don't have introductions, they're going to have no freaking clue what's going on. But then we get serialized podcasts like this, where we're talking about a book that we're reading. What are the odds that anybody is going to come in the middle of this whole like book analysis that is clearly serialized?
It's more likely than you think, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think, they're gonna like show up in the middle and say, hot damn, I'm a committed fan now, and never go back. But people are constantly going to be stumbling in and going like, yeah, what's going on? But on the other hand, I don't think, like, we'll do sort of an introduction every episode, but it'll just be like, here's the name of the thing we're doing, and I'm a guy, and you're a guy, let's go. But we won't, we won't have to summarize the entire book so far every time.
Well, I mean, we will have a 4-syllable word in baseline to do all the summarizing for us.
This is true.
Which is just wonderful. And even more appropriately, we're going to be doing this on a podcast whose title is a single Unicode character. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's like one Unicode code point in baseline. So there you go.
One Unicode code point in baseline for, and I think you said this is season 3, is that?
Yeah,
so,
this will be season 3.
So I like my own idea because I like tooting my own horn so hello and welcome to Women with Bunny Ears Holding Hands, season 3. We want headbands, a 1 character and 4-syllable word in baseline for the podcast where we discuss Plane Crash, aka Project Lawful, aka Mad Investor Chaos and the Woman of Asmodeus, aka I'm sure there are several titles by the end of this, which is a book by, I believe, Kelsey Piper and Eliezer Yudkowsky. Did I get those names right?
You got them exactly right.
Okay. Actually, I did not, because I learned from, my own linguistic education, but also from the internet, that Eliezer's name is pronounced with "ie" as opposed to "ei," which is how most people pronounce it. Most people say Eliezer, but it's actually Eliezer. And I'm sure he's going to correct me if he actually listens to this podcast and gives enough of a shit to give feedback, because there are diphthongs and vowels that I just haven't practiced. But
I don't know if it's
closer to the true pronunciation, I think.
I don't know if it's like a distinction that you or even he would notice, but I believe his name is pronounced Eliezer Yudkowsky.
Ah, you know what? There you go.
Like the closest to the way I've heard him pronounce it. But maybe I've misheard him or mentally bracketed the vowels wrong or whatever.
It is it's infrequent that somebody gets to introduce themselves. Like, we're very lucky in this situation where we can say our own names every episode if we so desire.
This is true.
and people can learn them from us directly. But mostly, if you see Eliezer or however you pronounced it, which I'm getting wrong, Eliezer.
I've also heard Eliezer so often that it just sounds also correct to me, even though it's not how I say it.
Yeah, it kind of blends together. But yeah, mostly when you see him on podcasts or videos or something, he's being introduced by somebody else, usually the podcast host or the host of the event or something. And so you don't get to hear him use his own name.
Right.
But I believe there were 2 times in videos that I've seen him use his own name, and in one of them he did correct the host of the show. And so I know there is a difference, and I think I'm remembering the difference correctly.
Nice.
So now that we've got all those introductions out of the way, we will never speak of this again.
Yeah, I'll have to write down that the long, complicated series of grammatical clauses that will make up the title and introduction of this podcast. But that's fine.
I didn't think to include the podcast proper title in the listing of how many syllables in baseline. But I think that's a good point. It is 1 character, and then we want headbands, 4 syllables.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, also, I'm going to have to sneak a Twin Peaks podcast into there.
Okay.
Somewhere. Don't worry about that one. That's just a special surprise for later.
Oh, okay. Maybe just like midway through the episode, like work it into a sentence. Have you seen the weatherman who sneaks song lyrics into his weather reports?
I'll probably, if it's an old meme, I've probably seen it and gone, oh.
It is a continuing meme.
Ooh.
The latest one I've seen, again, don't know how long because the internet is forever. The latest one I saw was an Eminem song, and he didn't get the explicit parts, obviously, but they were some pretty unique, kind of racy lyrics, and he worked them in. Just take it piece apart, each line, and work them into different reports, and then string them all together in a 15-second TikTok or whatever the kids these days are doing.
TikToking. Also, the name of the work that we're reading appears to me to be Project Lawful, also known as Plane Crash. I assume
not the other way around.
I assume it was originally known as Plane Crash because that's what all the text on the website is. And then eventually, in the story, they named the project they're working on Project Lawful. I don't remember if that's a spoiler or not. I think it already came up in the reading.
I don't think it's come up in the reading, but it has come up in the fact that the story is named that.
Right.
It is also the title of the website. It comes up. And in the reading so far, we have established that there is a project that is to take this ostensibly lawful country and make it even more lawful.
Oh, yeah.
And so, that project of turning law into law, that's, a lawful project or Project Lawful. So it's easy to deduce.
I wanna tell you some spoilers right now. Because I'm I don't know, hundreds of thousands of words ahead of you. Don't worry. They're not real spoilers, but
I actually, yeah. So I usually don't mind spoilers that much. And I actually am sort of the opinion that we shouldn't really give as much of a shit about spoilers as popular culture does. Because at least for me, if you are spoiled on something and that something is cool, it's neat, it's nifty, it makes you think, then it kind of makes you want to know how that came about and what are all the things that go into that reveal. And by you, I of course mean me, and I'm typical minding by assuming that other people feel this way. But yeah, I think spoilers can actually help popularize media of different types. But on the other hand, I recently started playing the new Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom, and Nintendo did a very good job of protecting certain spoilers in the advertisements for this game. And I played the game, and it took me like 12 hours to actually get around to following the plot line that the game suggests you should follow. And because I didn't follow the plot line, I wasn't introduced to this thing that most people would encounter early in the game. But I found it much later, and it blew my freaking mind. Not having seen any of it in the trailers, there being so many people being respectful of protecting spoilers nowadays, which is fascinating. And just having skipped that part of the plot and seen, a lot of the rest of the game, there was just this huge part of the game that I didn't know existed, and it was fantastic when I finally discovered it. Anyhow.
Well,
but if you want to spoil me, that's okay.
You make me consider. I think what I should do is just write down what I want to say, and then when we get to the point in the story where I am, I just mention,
weave it in with the Twin Peaks reference.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So wait, so these spoilers you want to tell me, is that you want to tell me because it's timely and it has something to do with what's going on? Or is it that it's stuff that you just read, having read ahead? Or is it just cool stuff you want to discuss and you want to jump the gun and make our later episodes shorter?
No, it's just, it is a little bit timely, but it can also wait.
Okay.
So forget I said anything. I said it.
Probably will. My memory is terrible, and partly why I want to go through the table of contents is to remind myself what the hell is going on. Yeah, so if we do end up sticking all of this in a episode that other people can listen to, just for their sake, people following your podcast, which I'm sure is at least 10,000, are going to come to season 3 and be like, what the hell are these folks doing? Why are they talking about reviewing chapters 1 through 69 and then going on with the podcast? Like, what happened? So I think you mentioned that it's important to have somebody looking ahead. But specifically, we're carrying the torch for another podcast whom we should credit. It was Steven Zuber and Eneasz Brodsky. I think, did they have any guests before or any other hosts? I don't think so.
I had one guest to explain what Glowfic was in episode 0, but in the podcast proper, it was just them.
And they started this particular book club podcast for the story we mentioned. And at some point, they decided, holy crap, we are 250,000 words into this story, and we still haven't decided whether we like it yet. But the fact that we don't know how we feel about it suggests that we're not really excited about it. Is that a good summary of where they're at?
Yeah, I suppose that's a summary of where they're at. I mean, I think they were also, they felt that the story was too slow paced because they weren't reading fast enough. That's the thing about the story.
Yeah, you gotta read fast. You gotta read fast. 250,000 words is, that's something you really should be consuming in a week or two at the most. And they ran that into 13 episodes, which included a break between a couple episodes while they had stuff to do. So that's 14 weeks for this thing that, they would have covered in 2 weeks normally. Eneasz probably a day, because I'm pretty sure he reads really quickly.
Really? I thought they were reading very slowly, and they just generally read very slowly.
I don't know. I just know I know that Ineash reads a lot of other things in addition to this story. And they also both run another podcast together, along with
system process. Swipe or insert card and follow instructions on pin.
Somebody's at an ATM. Is that what I'm hearing there?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
I think you mentioned to me that you tend to walk and talk when you're recording.
Indeed.
I didn't realize it was walking that far. But I guess
I had to pop down to the store to buy some cream to put in my coffee. I won't usually be doing that. I'll usually just be out in glorious nature.
Glorious nature. It is, 8:15 p.m. right now. So
glorious dusky nature.
And, that sounds like, that's probably not the best time to be out walking around enjoying nature, except that it is in the peak of summer. And so I'm sure in your quite barren, desertous state that you live in, it's the only time that you can get relief from those temperatures.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah. Not really, but a little bit.
A little
but
bit.
Mostly not.
Yeah.
No.
So I actually just before we started recording, finished up my sound check,
nice.
which I was doing with the air conditioning unit on in the background. And I think it works well enough now, my setup, that I can actually run the AC while I'm recording, and it will not be picked up too much. Right now, there actually is some noise from my PC, which I just replaced the motherboard, and I got a better processor, and I felt like splurging to get a better cooler for the processor. And so it's got this giant bulky heatsink with 2 giant fans on it. And I believe they are contributing to the noise output of my PC right now, despite said cooling unit having emblazoned on its side, be quiet, is what it says.
Wow.
So I think it could take its own advice. But yeah,
Ironic.
I moved my PC off of my desk where it was closer to the mic, so now all the fans are on the other side of the room. And if we do end up recording in the middle of the day, I will not die of heat stroke. So that's cool.
That's good. And indeed, literally cool.
Literally cool.
Yeah, I will endeavor to die of heat stroke in your place.
Really?
I'll go walking at high noon.
Oh, goodness.
On the hottest day of the year. And just see what happens.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. So we have some idea of who the hell we are, that we both have screen names that we took from somebody else.
True.
That we were hoping would be unique, despite ripping them off blatantly from somebody else. And we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, again, this is on your established podcast. Tell me about your own podcast. I, as a dutiful co-host, have gone through the entire archives and listened to every episode at full normal speed. So I've spent all of the time in my last 3 weeks doing that. And when I say this, I am completely lying to you. I listened to about 15 minutes of the last episode, so I know very little about what you've been doing so far.
Yeah, and the last episode was an intermission, so that isn't even the usual form of the podcast.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So the general idea is that I was on a different podcast, and I was talking with a member of the other podcast about Twin Peaks. And I was like, we should do an episode of this other podcast on Twin Peaks. Wait a minute. The other podcast is about discussing, politics and stuff. We're going to have to make our own podcast. And then...
spin-off.
We're going to have to discuss... we could get to Twin Peaks, That's always there for us. But we should discuss many other things with a tenuous link to Twin Peaks first. Like Neon Genesis Evangelion.
I feel like there are so many questions I could ask about that. I vaguely know that Neon Genesis Evangelion is a really weird trip with so many problematic elements in it. And the plot revolves around some like alien giants that are, for some reason, people decide to fight with robots that look exactly like the alien giants, all of which look really weird. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, for most of the show, it's just like very masterfully done mecha anime with surreal elements.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end, they kind of get into strange land. But
yeah, I think that one I've heard a lovely spoiler for a 30-year-old or whatever anime. I've heard that it has something to do with gray goo, and that everything devolves into uniformity. So
well,
I have not seen it myself, but that's my impression. Is very weird stuff that devolves into nothing.
I can tell you'd be better off just forgetting that spoiler because it's not really close enough to anything to
not really
warrant remembering. I mean, it's just like a thing that if you were thinking about the series afterwards, you would go, that's vaguely similar to this other concept. But yeah, I mean, I recommend it, but I certainly am not going to watch any new television shows at the drop of a hat. So
yeah, I have a huge backlog.
Right.
And I just went to a family shindig and got recommended 2 more series, which are the best series ever.
Wow.
So
what are they?
Excuse me. I can't remember either of them off the top of my head. Because I haven't started them because I have, so many other shows that I've been getting through. I just discovered the game show Actually, which I think everybody listening to this podcast would probably get a kick out of. It's basically
what is it?
It's just a game show where they read off trivia facts about nerd fandoms, and the contestants have to buzz in and correct the fact for some minor detail. My favorite so far is they were ordering, putting in alphabetical order various spaceships from different franchises. And one of the corrections was actually, the name of the ship in Star Trek is the USS Enterprise, not just the Enterprise. So it should be at the end of this, not in the middle. And even the host of the show was like, okay, that might be too pedantic for this, but definitely warrants a point in my book, that kind of pedantry. But yeah, so there are apparently several seasons of this show, and I'm only hearing about it now, which the internet has failed in that, because I am definitely among the target audience.
Sure. Yeah. It's even though I don't know any of that trivia, I think it's often very fun to see people who do know a lot of trivia.
Mm-hmm.
It's excellence in a very strange domain.
Right. So, Evangelion, Twin Peaks. Did you get to Twin Peaks?
No, we have not gotten to Twin Peaks yet. It'll always be there waiting for us.
Yeah, and you know what? It's great that we have this thing to look. It's a spoiler, really, for the rest of the podcast. Is we know someday we're going to get to Twin Peaks, and it's just going to be great because we've got all this background to build upon, and it'll just everything will come together, and it'll blow your mind.
Everything that
connected
inspired Twin Peaks, especially the things that came after it chronologically.
Yes.
Yeah. It's I've been toying with the idea that when we get to the Twin Peaks, we'll just have like episodes recorded basically as commentary tracks on top of Twin Peaks episodes. Just because like
the riff track treatment.
Sure. And that'll sort of center you for a while.
But Twin Peaks is series, right?
Yeah.
How many seasons?
There were 2 seasons of like regular television show length seasons, and then after a 25-year hiatus, there was a 3rd season.
25 years. That is a lot. And
Yeah.
I thought I was dated by the Arrested Development revival. Like that one was a lot for me. 25 years between series. I guess that's sort of on the order of Doctor Who level hiatuses, right?
Yeah. In the
so.
original Twin Peaks, there is like a character who says like, "See you in 25 years" or something. And then, so they're like, "Yeah,
it's
the thing."
prescient. It was planned all along, I'm sure.
It was planned all along. David Lynch said, "And once they cancel my show, I'll bring it back 25 years later."
All right, but we shouldn't talk about Twin Peaks just yet.
That's true.
That's all spoilers. They'll come at the end.
I've actually had to edit out parts of the Woman with Bunny Ears podcast because my co-hosts will be like, this is like that thing in Twin Peaks. I'm like, no, you fool. The joke is that we never mention that. It's just the audience can figure out that it's like Twin Peaks. You see?
I feel like for this we've talked enough about it that you might just, in order for sake of keeping this contiguous, just bleep out the word Twin Peaks
I'm just
in as many places as you can find, but definitely like leave 1 or 2 so listeners can get a hint of, this is women with bunny ears dancing, right?
It's Woman with Bunny Ears.
Women with Bunny Ears.
The official Unicode name.
Podcast presents season 3.
Yeah.
We'll work out a title someday.
I'll just leave it in here for now. If we do release it, this just doesn't count. This doesn't count against the prohibitions. I've decided.
No, this is episode 0, really, if not -1 of this season of podcast. So definitely, any number of references to Twin Peaks should be multiplied by the episode number, right? Naturally. And that's why
interesting point.
That's why you save it till the end, so it has the most impact, right? Largest episode number.
Yeah. You get to multiply the season number by the episode number.
Right.
That's why we're racking up a high score.
Cool.
I've now returned home with my cream, so I'm going to drink some of my coffee.
Excellent. Right now I'm on 0 caffeine Coca-Cola because ostensibly I should be getting some sleep someday.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think I might be one of those people that caffeine doesn't have a wakefulness effect on. I definitely get jittery if it's got sugar in it, but I don't think it keeps me up any more than just chatting with you, let's say.
Oh, well, I have that effect on.
Or, arguing with people on the internet in general will always keep me up. It's such a high.
Yeah. This is a well-known phenomenon. Someone is raining on the internet. So, you should compare caffeine to something less exciting than that to see if it keeps you up.
Well, there's my cat. My cat is letting me know that it is an hour and a half before his next feeding time, so I should, get ready.
Right, keeping you posted.
Yep, thanks, dude. Cool. So, do you want to try to get more content for a episode -1 or 0 of this show?
Actually, there's only one thing I need to do before we adjourn, which is I should switch my microphone to see how the other one sounds. How does this sound, by the way, to you?
This sounds, to me, okay, but I am listening through my own headset, so that probably does some amount of processing on itself, and it does sound a little bit like you're on the phone, that kind of. So I'm absolutely 100% certain there will be listeners who will complain.
Yeah.
But I think that is the case no matter what microphone or setup you use.
I don't know.
I am consistently shocked by podcast fandoms and their, being sticklers for audio quality. There are things I just like, it sounds pristine, crystal clear to me, and somebody's going to be like, why couldn't you filter out the siren going by in the background when you were talking? You know what?
All right.
Just gotta let people be annoyed sometimes.
So I'm gonna switch audio sources right now.
Right. You said you got a new mic. Is that right?
This is testing.
Testing. You are now
Nice.
sounding closer to the mic.
Okay. Well, I guess I am.
But we will have some degree of automatic balancing, which will have to go on because my microphone is incredibly quiet. And I have, through my sound check, decided not to preamp it because it cuts off the waves. And
right.
Oh my God, I am preamping it right now. Oh God, this episode is going to sound terrible.
That would explain why your waves sounded a little cut off, frankly.
Thanks. Yeah.
I thought that might just be the whole AC thing once you described that, or the fans, that rather.
All right. I'm afraid to switch it down because then you are not going to be able to hear me because you'll have to turn up your volume. And it's going to fuck up the automatic balancing. So let's see if you can still hear me.
Yeah.
With this down. Is this
that's fine.
Audible?
Awesome. Oh yeah, definitely. Even though
hopefully better quality.
When I switched my audio source, I now have a better microphone but a worse headset. So I can't really tell your quality anymore because all quality is bad to me now. But I can switch back now that we've done this sound test. And then I can tell you how your quality is.
All right, let's try. We totally should have done this at the beginning, so we could actually pretend have consistent audio quality if we ever decide to release this as an.
True. Well, hey, listen. If they want the bug, they need to suffer for it. Is what I'm saying.
They need to suffer. I think you cut out a bit there. Were you changing microphones?
Oh no. I was just opening and closing a door. I think would have been what that was about. And I can use Craig to leave a message, and I'll say audio setup testing, and now Craig will note that in our recording. This is when we were testing our audio setups.
Where does Craig give you that option?
You just type /note and then you type a message. I don't really know. I assume it's like an Audacity flag or maybe an MP4 chapter. Anyway,
something within the recording. Okay, yeah.
I'm gonna switch audio now.
It does send when you download it through Craig. It includes some kind of metadata.
It can, yeah.
And you can download it as an Audible project, among other things, or Audacity, not Audible. That'd be cool.
I've just switched through speakerphone to regular phone that I'm holding up to my face. How did that sound?
So you're now recording through a phone. Is that correct?
Yep. It's a phone held up to my face, like I'm making a phone call. How does it sound?
It sounds, I think, a little bit better than original. Than you started. Is this the same setup? Were you on a headset while you were walking around?
So there have been 3 setups. I started out with one headset. I moved to another headset when I told you I was testing another one. And now this is the 3rd setup that I'm testing out.
Yeah. So this sounds fine. Again, like there will be people who are much pickier than I am.
Sure.
However, in fairness, I did spend 2 hours just looking at the waveforms in the free editor that Craig hooks you up to. So I don't know if that can be considered not. It's like I will have much more of an opinion on your audio quality if I see the shape of the waves, as it were, than I do right now. It's kind of like I used to do 3D modeling, 3D Studio Max and Maya, and but I had to quit that for myself. I really wanted to be a video game artist when I was tinkering around with that, but I had to quit because the way I made the models was vertex by vertex. They all had to be in exactly the right place, and that just isn't tenable. That it took me like 2 hours to do something that could have easily been done with create cylinder, intersect with sphere, extrude, bend, or something like that. It's a thing that artists can do, and there are some artists who can get away with just spending a year chiseling away at one sculpture. But if you want to make any money at it and you don't already have an established name, that's not going to get you a job.
Yeah.
So I had to give up on that dream.
Oh, couldn't you? I mean, did you try adapting?
It's not just. I'm very pedantic. I think this story is good for me. Because it touches that pedantic part of psyche, puts a positive learning scheme.
Nice. Oh, good.
Well,
yeah.
Come along and nudge the microphone like that. Can you hear that?
Sorry, I had to disconnect and reconnect to switch my audio back.
Perfect. You missed. Oh, you did not miss. He likes to shove his face in whatever it is I'm. And right now, that is this microphone. Oh my goodness! Please don't. I do enjoy having a function.
I can hear some low-level fumbling around as though a cat is eating your microphone, but very gently.
That's actually me adjusting the cable, but he was
a
moment ago.
So it's a silent cat eating your microphone.
Well, he has left the building. I'm very still or getting attention to anything other than him. Yeah, I have 2 cats. That one wears a bell because he's old and stupid. And if he manages to escape and go out around the neighborhood, he will forget where home is. And so the bell serves, of course, the other purpose of scaring away potential prey to keep him from eating all the songbird, but also so we can hear him when we go out looking for him at 2 in the morning, or at 11 at night, which becomes 2 in the morning by the time we finally find it, hiding under a car, shivering. So yeah, he gets a bell. The other cat is loud enough on his own. He only has 3 legs, and so there's a lot of hopping around, thumping noise when he moves.
Wow, that's crazy. How does he come by having only 3 legs?
Tragic accident when he was at the animal shelter. He got left overnight with his leg stuck in the door. So that's unfortunate. He's very skittish, scared of anybody towering over him.
That's tough.
But he gets along fine. He meows at me an hour and a half before he expects me, or he should expect me to put food in his dish. How about you? Any pets?
Yeah, I have a cat. Newly, actually, I got this cat. He's a little cat. He's like 6 months old, so he's just like a regular cat but smaller. He's very cute. He's sort of a gray color. He still likes to play a lot and be pet. And really, those are the only 2 things of interest to him.
Keep up the playing, because we were rather neglectful of your cat, and now he just doesn't. He has gotten used to doing nothing, and so if we try to get him to do any play, he'll just stare at what are waving in front of him. Like, nope.
Well, that's as far as I can tell, that's a natural process. As cats get older, they get less and less interested in playing, even though they retain their interest in walking around and looking at things and purring. Is that your old cat who's lost the will to play?
Yeah, actually, I think the other Blitzkrieg is the old one. Rather large black cat. He's not super chunky, but strong built, say. Such that the vet is always telling us to get him to lose nothing.
Really?
Because he's just a big cat.
Well, I mean, if your vet is this cat like a bodybuilder who BMI doesn't work on him? Because vets usually know how big a cat should be.
a cat should be as big as a bodybuilder? What
I
you're
think
saying?
they just, they know the height of the cat, and they can tell like a large cat from a fat cat usually.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess.
It might just be something about his breed, whatever that is. But however, his weight, to be fair, could stand to lose some pounds because he has gotten to the point where he has trouble jumping.
Oh, wow.
Is great for us being able to let him out in the yard without about hopping fence, but less great when he climb up on my lap, hopping up there, dig his front claws, my leg, and pull. And it's a very large cat, so a very large cat doing chin-ups on my leg is not the most comfortable thing.
He's like, if I can't get up to the lap, I'll bring the lap down to me.
Exactly.
Well, I have payoff for you for that story about me going to the store to buy cream to put in my coffee.
Oh, good.
I accidentally bought an identical container of 2% milk. So I just had milk to put in my coffee, which is not nearly as good.
Not especially. I'm so sorry. You have my sympathy.
What kind of milk do you drink?
Well, now I'm back to oat milk or soy milk or whatever non-dairy milk because I get more than enough dairy all the time. Yeah, so our household, but when I did, it was whole milk. As soon as I had I don't know why it has anything with me having because it's the same price, but I feel like it was as soon as I was financially independent, I could live large and have whole milk. I grew up on 1% and fat-free milk is that. So, but my grandfather used to just drink cream straight, forkfuls of butter for a snack.
Nice.
So, my gene, they enjoy the fatty dairy.
Yeah, that's
Can you hear that guy?
I'm listening very hard. Oh, I think I heard a little like kind of a noise, which could have come from a cat, for example. Is that your Is that your hour warning that you have to feed your cat in an hour?
So this is Rumble.
Nice. Nice.
Right. So, using me for a sound check, or mic check, probably not going to give you the best results. I am not.
Well, don't worry, I'll listen to it afterwards. So we should be fine. I mean, I'm also not really that picky, although I do think I've been in microphone situations and then listened back to the episode and gone, this was terrible. If this was somebody else's podcast, I would not listen to this podcast.
Unscribe.
Yeah. Like, it's actually, there's sort of like an audio illusion almost, where because I already know my own voice and vaguely what I was saying, like my brain compensates for some of the audio quality. But if I go in without that, I'm like, oh god. I'm seeing it with fresh eyes, and I'm like, what the hell is this?
So we met on the Bayesian Conspiracy Podcast Discord.
Right.
Have you followed the Bayesian Conspiracy podcast?
Yeah. So I've listened to some of the Bayesian Conspiracy. They kind of didn't, I thought this is a fine podcast, but I don't really, only so many hours in the day, so I'm not going to prioritize this one.
Right.
However, I did listen to the entirety of the HPMOR audiobook from the same source, the same guy, you might even say.
The same guy.
And so,
among several guest stars, right?
True.
Very good production quality there. However, many of the guests were using their own recording setup and the MP3s, so they do have variable audio quality.
Yeah, that's unavoidable
for community crowdsourcing. But aside from the variable audio, I thought it was very, very well produced.
Yeah, it was really good. It's really good. I remember listening to one of the extras as a panel discussion where some of the people who were in it were at some sort of panel and discussing the process of making it. And who is that character who is it Tracy Davis is the character who has really bad audio quality but the best performance?
I do not recall. It has both been a while And Tracy Davis is one of the names of characters that I could not place. I never got a good idea of who that character was in my mind.
Well, there's one of the characters who, like, you know, really leans into the idea that she's being courted by dark powers, even though she isn't. She's like one of the characters who isn't at all being courted by dark powers.
All right.
The ringer mill makes it so that she is, and she really leans into it. And her performance is phenomenal, and her microphone is So, you know, you just gotta kind of take one with the other.
Yeah. So I did also listen to that podcast, obviously. But that is what led me to first their follow-up analysis podcast, and then ultimately here and the Bayesian Conspiracy podcast itself. But
right.
Did start with the HPMOR audiobook, but I gather that you did not follow the analysis podcast subsequently.
I listened to the first couple of episodes of We Want More, and I enjoyed that, but I was listening to it because I had just finished a listen through of HPMOR, right. And so I was like, oh, I know so many interesting things, and then they're in the beginning chapters, and the beginning chapters are great, but they aren't dropping bombshells. I thought, well, I kind of don't want to, you know, listen to these guys go through all the early chapters to get to the later chapters. So I put that back on the shelf. Maybe in 3 years or something, I'll enjoy being reminded of the early chapters as well. And then the rest of their analysis podcast, I haven't listened to at all, and except for this one.
So what brought you here?
Continue. Well, you know, this one is written by Eliezer Yudkowsky. And I was aware of it, and then I thought, I learned what it was, and it was it's made of posts on a forum, and then I thought, that probably isn't good, right? Like, compare all of the forum RP you've ever read in your life to, like, a book, and it's you know,
absolutely
very few even approach the other. However, I did think, you know, it is Eliezer Yudkowsky who he's a great writer. He's a great writer.
That's an interesting take. I have heard opposite opinion, but also that's not usually
somebody who thought I hate Eliezer Yudkowsky, but I love forum RP, and I think this will make his writing good.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, I agree. He's a very good writer. I know, at least from HPMOR, and the sequences in general are both very entertaining to read. HPMOR was clearly a learning process, but that it did shake out well, I think, for him. But there is his fiction, I think, is decidedly lower quality than what one might call nonfiction. One where, let's just say, a member of this community.
I don't know if I can agree with you there, but it might just be that I enjoy fiction more inherently. So, you know.
Okay. Yeah. So there are varied opinions. But yeah, so you found that story. How did you find the story itself? What brought you here from there, and what brought you there from nowhere?
So I guess I would have seen the story just from, like, it coming up in my generalized social media internet feed. You know, I'm hooked into enough places where news of this reached me when Eliezer Yudkowsky made his announcement. And then eventually I was listening to HPMOR unrelatedly. And
at the time.
Yes. It was just like a couple months ago, I decided to listen to it as an audiobook.
Oh, cool.
I'd read most of it, but when it was published, and then there was like a sort of longer hiatus, and then I didn't read it. So I thought, I'll finally go back and read it all. Haha. But anyhow, I finished that, and I was poking around the HPMOR podcast website, and I saw this thing for Plane Crash, and I thought, oh, I know that. Maybe they're making a recorded audio version of Plane Crash. That would probably make it very easy for me to consume on my long walk, and it would probably be pretty fun. but it was an analysis podcast, which was also pretty fun. And then I decided that I really had to read this work of fiction because it sounded pretty great when they were discussing it. I thought, you know how sometimes you get like 10 minutes of a thing and then you're like, I understand this thing and I'm completely on board. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, and then I bit the bullet and I was trying to use those AI text-to-speech episodes for a while, which are pretty good. They're pretty good, but I actually ended up using a good old-fashioned text-to-speech program that I just have on my phone that basically doesn't do any, intonation correctly at all. But
Right.
it's just like annoying. It's not bad. And so that allows me to go much faster.
Right.
And so, I listened to this podcast we were listening to. I read the book, and here I am. Yeah. How about yourself?
So I got here because I never stopped listening to the Methods of Rationality feed, and
Nice.
eventually it dragged me here.
How many things were there in between?
So in between, see, off the top of my head, there was the HPMOR analysis, We Want More.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, they did a few reviews of short story, I think. The one notably was We Want More Superman. They read Metropolitan Man by Andrew Whale. It's an A, right?
Alexander Wales, yes. That name
Yes,
is
Alexander
familiar
Wales.
to me.
Andrew Wales is
Oh, yeah.
Alexander Wales, right? And and that was really great. I loved Metropolitan Man, and hearing it again through the analysis cast was pretty great. And then they followed that up with another of his works eventually, Worth the Candle, which is also a very long web serial that is currently being released book by book. I think the third book out, at least audiobook form and ebook. I don't think there's a print edition yet, but it being released as ebook and audiobook means that he's actually taking some effort to go back and edit it, which is rare among web fiction authors. And then that ultimately rolled into this one. I don't think there were many other analysis casts in between. However, there were some spin-off podcasts, let's say, that arose on the Discord. I was following Too Rash, Too Unadvised for a while, which is or was, I guess they're done now, looking at Ada Palmer's Terra Ignota series, which I really enjoyed. The series.
I have that on my to-read list. Those books.
Yeah, I technically read the first 3 books. I absorbed probably the first book and maybe a few chapters in the second book. I enjoyed them while I was reading them, but there was something about the second and third book that it felt like it was not enough content per word, content per page. Kind of a similar feeling to what the previous hosts of this podcast may have been feeling.
I do remember some guy on the internet who I just read his post, and he said, "Here's my review of Too Like the Lightning. It wasn't like the lightning enough because it was too slow."
Yep, that's fair. The first book, I think, in particular, was good despite being slow because there was so much world building in it. Everything was very novel. It's I don't want to say entirely unique. It's probably not entirely unique. I don't read enough science fiction to be able to say authoritatively that it's unique, but it feels foreign enough that I was learning something every page, every chapter in the first book. And then once all those characters in the world became established, and it started getting in more to the plot rather than the world building, that's where it started to lose me because, I'm not learning as much. Now I'm watching this happen. And so as it would happen, I fell off of the analysis podcast at about the same time as I was trying to reread the books, and I also fell off midway through book 2. And it's on my list of things to continue, but I just other podcasts got in the way. Go ahead.
Do you need to reread in order to enjoy the podcast? Or,
No. Well,
like you personally.
Let's say no.
Okay.
As far as this genre of podcasts goes, I
Right.
had a lot of fun following We Want More and essentially reliving the whole book second time. Like I felt like I was reading it again, listening to their podcast, and so I didn't need to reread it. I probably could do the same thing with Terra Ignota, but on the other hand, I do want to actually read it because I did not get to the 4th book, and it had been so long since I finished the 3rd book.
I see.
So I really needed a deeper refresher of what was going on. So I committed to reading along. And that might have been my downfall, deciding to read again. I actually gave up reading in general around 6th grade.
What a Chad.
What a Chad. Yeah, I never, I think, read another book throughout school, high school, college. And aside from Harry Potter fanfic, of course.
I've only read like one Harry Potter fanfic in my life.
I wonder which one.
Yeah, I've already told it to you. It's Exhausted.
Yeah, I think I've only also read 2 others, plus the endorsed continuation of Methods of Rationality, which was very good. Significant Digits, yes.
Yeah.
Have you read
it? People have recommended that enough to me recently that it's making its way onto my list, even though when I heard about it initially, I was like, I don't know about that. But people are like, oh, it's good.
I thought it did a really good job of carrying the style as well as the plot.
That's good.
It at some point became hard to distinguish what was from one and what was from the other because they felt so similar. I also have a terrible memory, so you don't need to take my word for it. Can make your own decisions. But I did really like it. And I think the only other 2 Harry Potter fanfics I read were Harry Potter and the Natural 20.
Oh, yeah, that has a funny title and concept.
And it is a funny concept, and it is a funny story, and unfortunately got cut short midway.
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't know what became of the author, let's say, but they did, I think years later, come back and do one more chapter, but then similarly left off like in the middle of the story, and the last I checked had not continued. So that one, and then there was another one which was more fanficky than interesting crossovers, more like just somebody thought that they had a better plot than J.K. Rowling, and they were probably right.
Wow.
Because it's a kid's story. It's not very complex.
Let me sort of briefly shift the subject, and I guess warning for like meta spoilers about HPMOR, like about the number of chapters that there are, that kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah. I came back, 8 years ago. I was reading HPMOR when it came out, and there was a hiatus, and I stopped reading it, and I was like, I'll come back later. And then, I did a bunch of other things in my life, citation needed. And then 8 years later, I come back, and I'm reading the book. And actually, the thing that got me into reading the book was I was watching Eliezer Yudkowsky interviews, and there was one that was the one from the We Want More podcast.
Oh.
I believe. And so it had Eneasz Brodsky and the two guys who were doing We Want More, and they got Eliezer Yudkowsky on as a special guest, and they, interviewed him about stuff, about the work of fiction, and and then there was also like a Bayesian conspiracy episode, also with Eliezer Yudkowsky, after in the heady days of just having done HBMOR. So anyhow, those mentioned like he was working on an epilogue to HBMOR. Right. And I thought, oh, that's great. It's been 8 years. Surely he will have finished the epilogue. And then I get to the end of the story, and I was like, was that last chapter the epilogue? No. There's still no epilogue for HBMOR.
Yep.
It's still not out. It's still technically outstanding.
Is Something to Protect not the epilogue?
No. Is that just the name of the final chapter?
I think that's the final chapter or series of chapters. Something to Protect, and then : insert character name. What appears to be 6 characters. But yes.
No, that's why I thought it might be an epilogue, because it does sort of have the structural purpose of an epilogue, like it's wrapping everything up.
Right.
But no, the promised epilogue, which, the story doesn't even need an epilogue. I just happen to know that there will be an epilogue.
Right.
I think it's going to be like after a time skip.
Well, I think what happened is somebody wrote significant digits, and that was just too good of a continuation that if I were Eliezer, I would at that point feel like, okay, it doesn't need an epilogue anymore. And like you said, it didn't in the first place, but like, what is the motivation now? There's already a really good sequel. So
yeah, I mean, he does mention in the interview that, like, even though he could have written the epilogue faster or whatever, he's glad that he's been able to see significant digits, which he thinks is quite good.
Yeah.
I don't know if the two would really conflict. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, webfic writers making promises they don't end up keeping. Not the most surprising or uncommon thing.
True. I would love to, know what the barrier is. Like, maybe he just lost interest in it, or maybe he just hasn't thought about it for a while. But, he wrote Plane Crash, which I understand is a completely different well of energy and zeitgeist. Yeah. But you'd think that maybe, one of those days he would think, I gotta go back to that epilogue, maybe.
Yeah. Well, on that note of webfic writers going back to something, the author of Worth the Candle, in fact, just released a not epilogue, but a world-building document, which may actually function as an epilogue. I haven't checked, but I can imagine a world in which it is written by one of the characters in the story. But that just came out recently, and it has not been covered yet by the other podcasts, and I don't know if they will. As of today,
what's the name of the Worth the Candle podcast?
The name of the Worth the Candle podcast is Not Everything is a Clue.
All right, that's what I thought it was.
Yes. But yeah, and the podcast we are ourselves continuing is not, or has not yet picked up that continuation, but they did just drop an episode, at least I think. I don't know if it's patrons only, but it is at top of my podcast feed right now for the Barbie movie. So that's fun.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to it, but I'll have to, I have to now watch the movie. Yeah. I definitely wasn't going to before. It's just that it's their fault entirely. I'm watching it not ironically, but it's an assignment for class.
Yeah. You would never do it on your own. You would never even think about it.
Yeah.
But no, I've been trying to arrange a friend of mine to do the classic, the double feature of Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
It's been tough because we live in different states, but we're scheming about it.
Yeah. So Oppenheimer I do really want to see. But I have been inspired so much by the snobbery around it that I only want to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX.
Nice.
And the only one of those nearby is a 50-minute drive away for one, but also
Right.
like every show for the next month is sold out.
Oh,
So,
I mean, at least that means they're going to be showing it for at least a month, you know?
I hope. Yeah. Maybe not a month. Maybe I exaggerate. But I was looking for seats, but I wanted to get at least 2 seats because I think one of my friends would get a kick out of it too.
Nice.
And there were maybe single seats like up in the front corner, which is just like I do not want to watch an IMAX from the front corner. The first IMAX movie I ever saw was in the Dome IMAX theater in San Jose at the Tech Museum, and that one is just like you're always sitting at the front no matter where you're sitting, just because the screen curves up around you, and that was enough for me. I think I saw Batman Begin in that theater, possibly.
Wow.
And yeah, not the best experience, let's say. Love the movie. The experience,
It's kind of weird that they built a movie theater where there are no good seats.
Yeah. Well, I think their argument is that there are no bad seats.
Yeah, it's like
but
every seat is now of average quality.
Right, but the reason I don't want to sit in the front of an IMAX theater is because I don't want to have to like crane my head to look at the screen. But if it's if the screen is all around you, you don't just have to turn your head, like angle it up to see the screen. You also have to physically move your neck and your head during the movie in order to catch the different parts. That was not the best.
Well, good
But
luck
Go ahead.
getting to the special IMAX 70 millimeter film experience. I don't know if I've ever seen an IMAX movie on film. I think I've only been to digital IMAXs.
So I'm a bit of a snob about IMAX. For the same reason that I am a bit of a snob about my screen's resolution, which is in a 16:10 ratio as opposed to the common 16:9 ratio. Because 16:10 was a ratio invented for practical purposes versus 16:9, which was just like, okay, well, what's a happy medium between theater widescreen and 4:3 television? Let's we can compromise at this dumb aspect ratio. But yeah, the 16:10 ratio was designed so that you can have open 2 documents side by side, which is it, and like that's the practical justification for it. But I got used to it doing all sorts of other stuff on it, and now I just have my practice for it. But then I worked for a few years as a editor, and so I had to reference a bunch of stuff side by side, and I was very happy to have remained a snob and kept a 16:10 ratio screen. But yes, IMAX is similar. IMAX is taller than widescreen theater, so there actually is a part of the movie that you do not see if you see it in formats other than IMAX. It's probably like very minor difference that like nobody well, they put the least important stuff on the edges of the screen, and they've done that since the beginning of television, when this movie has been modified from its original version. It has been modified to fit your screen. So cutting off the things on the sides has always been common practice, but if you want to adapt an IMAX movie to a standard widescreen theater, you have to cut off the top and the bottom, which is not what people are used to. So the frame.
I like to imagine that IMAX is actually just filmed in 4:3, just an Uno reverse.
Yeah, I think I would not be surprised there were IMAX. That's the thing about like the alternative film type like IMAX is that the fact that they're going against the standard means that they give fewer shits about standard. And so if they're gonna film in something that's, not gonna fit anyway, all right, well, if I want to film in 4:3, why not? Let's just jury rig this camera.
Sure.
The different ratios.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, it seems like a fun time to go watch that movie the way it was intended.
The way it was intended on a giant screen where
yeah.
the explosions will blow your ears out, because that's the other thing about IMAX. They, turn up the volume, let's say.
And specifically being projected by a film projector. I don't know if I personally would perceive any difference there.
Well, IMAX also does digital. They do IMAX Laser, I think, specifically, which is a competitor for Dolby Digital, which special tagline is, yes, the projector's still on, or something like that, because they are very proud of how blacks are.
I mean, that is pretty good.
The film version of Vanta Black.
Right.
So IMAX is trying to do the same thing with laser, I think.
I mean, do they use an actual laser? Probably not, right?
I think Dolby does. Can you hear my typing, by the way?
Oh, no. Couldn't hear typing at all.
That's wonderful, because I actually, along with my screen resolution snobbery, enjoy me some clackety keyboard.
Nice.
What does IMAX?
It was named after Shlomo Laser. Yeah. An actual name that some people have, which I think is a really cool name.
Shlomo?
No, Laser. It's like a Jewish name.
I have a friend who goes by Lazar. Is spelled differently, correct?
Right.
But it's also one of the lead characters in, I believe, Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah, his name is Laser Wolf, which is the coolest name.
It is a really cool name, and from what I recall, my friend who goes by Lazar Wolf chose that name independently.
Wow.
And has not seen the show. I could be wrong, but I vaguely recall having asked him about it, and that being the response. And he's not one to lie. Anyhow, but yes, it is a cool name.
And it could be the name of the guy who developed the IMAX digital standard.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It is a laser-based projection system. Uses 2 projectors simultaneously. An enormous laser beam. Interesting. So I don't think it's a scanner like a CRT. I think the might just be the...
I'm also Googling this. Wow, they have a 12-channel sound system. I think that I think 5 is the most you need. Frankly, 5.1.
Well, you gotta get top and bottom too.
Okay. 8.1. That's my final offer. I had a great idea at one point that because all of our audio channels are recorded separately in this setup, that if I had my act together, which I don't, I could mix it in like 5.1 surround sound, and then to the listener, it would sound like we were all standing around and, talking over his head or whatever.
All 5.1 of us?
Yeah. As many people as need be. If you have, I guess even if you have stereo.
I do enjoy stereo edits of interviews. I think that's a cool thing. I don't know how to do it correctly. Like there are a lot of cool tricks that people do to make film, video and audio flow in a way that keeps your attention going the right direction. And using stereo is one of them. How does
I've listened to some podcasts that thought, we will use stereo. We have 2 guests. Easy. I will now make the left channel one guest and the right channel the other guest. And that's actually bad. That doesn't work how you think it works. You need there to be like, bleed over into the other channel.
Yeah,
it's just louder in the left than the right.
I have heard some of those where Yeah, they try to be clever, and it just ends up being, my left ear is getting the wrong audio quality, different from my ear.
Yeah, but, I barely even want to do the part of the editing where I run it through silence remover.
Well,
And
okay, so I mean, if you're going to be editing it yourself, unless there's big silences, you might not even want to bother doing a silence remover because most podcatchers have remove silence as a feature. Like you just press a button and it takes out all the pauses for you.
I've never
Sorry,
used
I said
one.
most podcatchers. I mean most good podcatchers. I'm
Right.
sure anything Apple puts out is crap, and anything Google puts out is even more crap.
I tried using one that it was like a silence remover, but it didn't let me do what I wanted, because what I want is like any silence that there is. I want it to be like a logarithmically shorter silence, I guess exponentially shorter. But the only silence removers I could find, or the one I was using at least, I didn't look that hard. It just would like skip the silence if it was over a certain amount of time. And that leads to the paradoxical result where like a very short silence is longer than a long silence because it skips the long silence, but it leaves like the interword gaps the same. And I don't know, maybe that was just the one I was using, and everyone else has a way better silence remover.
Yeah,
but
I think so. I use Podcast Addict, which is I think probably one of the podcatchers, and I believe just you can like select the sensitivity.
Right, but how mine had a selectable sensitivity as well, but that didn't help with my problem because no matter how low or high sensitivity I set it, it was always removing all of the silence, whereas I wanted it to leave just a bit of silence in for actual silence.
Yeah. Podcast Addict lets you select the algorithm aggressiveness level from low to extreme. So this is the other thing my cats do, is that when it gets really close to when they're going to be fed, they just start fighting because it makes us pay attention to them.
That's crazy.
They have conspired on this plan.
Kabuki theater.
They are clearly not enjoying it, but it is clearly a performance for my sake.
That's very odd. I feel like cats don't really have the mental ability to make such a plan.
I've heard they hold grudges. I have heard.
Yeah. Do they hold performances?
Apparently. Yeah, it's interesting because they don't fight much at all. I think maybe it might be that it's not a planned performance and just that the reason they don't fight much is because they usually hang out in different places, and but when it gets close to feeding time, they both want to be crawling all over my keyboard at the same time. And so they get in each other's way. They're like, no, I want to bug him. No!
They're violating the NAP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. There's also, I guess, a fun fact about this podcast, as with every podcast, is that my director's artistic vision is that you should listen to it at 2x speed, probably, or the highest speed you can, where it still sounds good to you. But you're getting it faster.
I will endorse that wholeheartedly, particularly if we end up actually publishing anything like what we are currently recording. Oh, this has actually not been nearly as long as I thought it had. Feels like when I'm just constantly talking, I think maybe it feels like it's been longer. Because usually when I'm hanging out with people, I'll get like a few words in over the course of a conversation. And so my net time to statements made ratio suggests that we should be nearing the 5-hour mark right now. But no, it's less than an hour even.
Wow, really? I thought it was.
My clock is wrong. Let me see.
Craig might have a readout of how long we've been going.
Well, there's also a timestamp on the recording note.
That's interesting.
Okay. It's never mind. It is longer because Craig
It's
is
weird.
a time zone away from me, or Discord.
Oh,
they're on Colorado time, aren't they? That's probably
Why would Craig be on Colorado time and
not Craig.
No, wait.
The Beijing conspiracy, because they live in Colorado, I believe, right?
But what does that have anything to do with anything?
We're not in that channel anymore, are we? You're in Colorado time.
I think I am in Colorado time. I think, first of all, any times it shows you are just going to be in your time zone.
But it's not.
And
I'm seeing. Maybe my computer clock is not set up because I changed the motherboard. What time is it right now?
it's 10:48 p.m.
Okay, yeah, my computer's off. That feels much more correct. 2 hours.
Wait, does that mean you have to feed your cats?
I guess that does mean they were being more honest than I expected. Oh. My spouse and I are also taking care of a friend's cat and bunny, and they recently installed an automatic feeder for the cat. So the last time we took care of them, every time we come over, we would give them food. But now my spouse went over there, and the cat was bitter because she was not getting food. Because it was not automatic time yet. Why does my computer not know what time it is? How do I fix? I'll deal with it later.
Be in the settings somewhere.
Yeah, it's would that have changed when I changed the motherboard? It's like I'm still using the same operating system at work, same. No, it's got my zone. It's not time for daylight saving Friday, Thursday evening.
In the middle of summer.
Yeah.
Although I guess if, you just started up your computer, it could be in the wrong
okay.
time zone or daylight.
Oh, I did have to reset the BIOS, so I pulled out the system battery earlier, so maybe it thinks it's going off the motherboard. Anyhow, long story short, I clicked the sync button. Now I've got the right time.
Oh, nice. That's all you
needed. And we've been
needed.
recording for 2 hours, so there's
nice. At the tone, it will be 2 hours since we began recording.
I'm curious, like, if you do run the skip silence filter on this, I wonder if it'll actually compress it down to something reasonable.
It usually, I don't know, depending on how aggressive you want to be with it, I think it usually takes down like 20%, maybe.
Respectable.
So,
yeah, I know I do usually have, I speak with a lot of pauses and ums.
Sure.
The ums probably aren't going to help for the silence, unfortunately. It would be nice. I'm sure, actually, there are AI editors that will take out the ums. That is... that there is no way that's not a thing yet.
I don't know. I don't trust
AI.
Those dang machines.
Yeah, I don't know if they're AI yet, but there's got to be automatic edits for that.
Yeah. On the other hand, that's what the 2x speed is for.
Indeed.
You just skip right by that. Gives your brain a little moment to flush its
catch
cache.
up to the 2x speed.
Yeah. When reading, you can look at a comma, and when listening, you can wait for the person to say
So my imsiyudt is on 1.3 time right now. I have a talking head I think I put on, but other than that, I think most things I put on 1.7. I can't quite get double in addition to the skip silent.
Yeah, it really varies for me by the show, and then also like by the day, and by even what subject they're talking about sometimes. Like if it's a unfamiliar subject, then they're going to be using words I don't really know, and so I might have to slow down. But if they're talking about something I know all about, then I can usually understand the words and just go really fast.
All right, so I think actually it's about time for me to turn into a pumpkin now that I see the correct time. So we should figure out what we're doing next. If any of this is going out into the public.
Mm.
And if we want to decide on an agenda for next time, do you think we should just hop
Sure.
into the story so far?
Yeah, I guess we should give like a run. We should still give a rundown of like who we are and this other podcast that we're following on from. Even if we do put this out, then it will be nice to have it in a condensed form in the other one.
Yeah, this can be our
about the
patrons only episode for
Yeah.
our -1 patron.
Yeah, we pay that guy to listen to our episode.
Indeed.
I guess I could put this out as like the intermission between season 2 and season 3, and the intermission is allowed to be anything.
Yeah,
so.
There's just so much we've been talking about that nobody near.
The people crave knowing about IMAX and the Jewish name Lazar and cats. People love cats.
People love cats. True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if they don't like it, they can just like stop listening. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowed.
True.
We maybe should also just preface with, if you don't like this, stop listening, please.
I think, if they don't know that and they learn it through the experience of listening to the podcast, then we will have taught them a valuable life lesson about stopping things. So, yeah. Yeah. Have we actually mentioned, in case this is going out, like the full title of the podcast we're continuing on from is "It Makes Sense If You Understand Decision Theory," also known as imsiyudt or imsiyud.
We have now.
Have now.
Yeah, 2 hours and 10 minutes into this.
2 hours in.
We'll mention where we're coming from. Give some respect to the previous generation, if you will.
True.
So I have to ask now then, do you think this story will actually make sense to people who understand decision theory?
I mean, so far it makes sense to me, and I only somewhat understand decision theory. And then they sometimes have gotten fairly close to explaining decision theory. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of the lectures is decision theory, and then you'll know decision theory. So
then you will, and
it will make sense.
Be prepared for the part of the story you've already read.
Yeah.
So you also, having listened to it through a text-to-speech and/or the AI reading, you probably didn't get my content warnings, did you?
No. I mean, I heard about the ones that they mentioned in imsiyudt, like content warning math.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is very funny.
I'm looking back on that, I'm thinking that might have been a bad idea.
Why?
Because it seems to set a precedent that I don't think is going to be good to follow up on. I think those might end up being the only math-heavy chapters that I feel are worth skipping, because we're getting closer and closer to decision theory, is my understanding. That the lectures will become more and more important to the plot, as opposed to just literally lines and lines of equations.
Well,
I think those. I stand by that. Those are those are 2,000 words summarizable in 5 bullet points.
Sure.
I stand by that assertion. I just, as far as what I put in the actual formatting of stuff, questioning back then.
I feel like you could probably. I mean, there are several things about the lectures which I'm sure we'll get into when we discuss a chunk that has a lecture in it. But first of all, the lectures are pretty basic. So if you already understand the basic subject matter that's being discussed, very few people actually know about formal logic or whatever. But if you do, you're like, oh yeah, I knew that.
I definitely felt that way myself.
Right.
And even though I did go through and actually try to answer the homework question.
Yeah, that one was That one was an interesting one. Even though I kind of know it, I also kind of like don't know it. So.
I would like a spoiler. I would like to know whether there is more homework, at least in the sections that you have read ahead to.
I mean, I'm gonna venture the answer no, but also when I read through the book, I didn't even register that they were like implicitly giving me, the reader, homework when they were giving the students homework. So it's quite possible that they, in a later lecture, they're like, and you can work that out on your own. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm sure those characters will work it out on their own. Anyway, you know. I think they do explicitly use the word homework. Like Carissa is like, I gotta go do that homework for the first one. And if they just said it in a different way later, then I may have just missed out on it. But
all right,
you know,
because I do enjoy the homework personally. Like, I think the best way to learn is by doing. Sorry, that's a lie. The best way to learn is by teaching. If there's something you don't know, find somebody else who wants to learn it and tutor them, and you will learn so much. I tutored somebody in I think it was partial differential equations, something like that, and I had not taken that class before, but I'd taken adjacent classes, and so I learned a bit. And similarly, I learned something about I think it was Arduinos by teaching a middle school class on Arduino programming. It was good times.
Nice. So, as I was saying, there are three things. There are some things with the lectures. One, they're pretty basic if you know the subject. Two, Eliezer Yudkowsky has written about the subject in various other places, mostly in the sequences, and then also in like different sequences. So if you've read those, then you're probably just nodding along.
Right.
You know, if you haven't read them, then you're probably like, oh, that's so cool.
Having listened through the text to speech, you probably missed a lot of the hyperlinks that he throws in there.
Yeah, well,
there aren't a lot so far, but there are a few.
Yeah, generally the way it's written, it like you kind of get the sense that there might be a hyperlink there, and so I can look at my phone screen and there's a hyperlink, and I go, oh, maybe I'll click on that, and then I see what it is, and I go, oh yeah, that's what it seemed like it would be.
So the previous podcast concluded with the first sex scene of the story. Lovely. I believe it's also chapter 69 by my count, if I recall.
Nice.
Let me see. It's that table of
If you missed that opportunity.
If I missed that opportunity, it's terrible. And I should be fired. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, what I have here, episode 12, final. It makes sense if you understand. I missed it. Oh, that's so right. It's in next episode. It's midway through book 8. So anyhow, they finished on chapter 64. In more ways than one. Thank you. And in that, the very first chapter in what I have called book 7 leads with kissing is not a human universal. And that is a hyperlink to an article about how kissing actually is not a human universal, that there are people on Earth who don't seek the pleasure of smashing their mouths together.
So I don't know if I followed that particular hyperlink. I think I definitely noticed it existing, because I remember the host talking about how it was weird that Daphilon didn't have kissing, and I thought to myself, as an anthropologist myself, something of anthropologist, I know that kissing is not a human universal. And so I was pleased to note that a source had been cited to support this fact explicitly in the story.
That source actually being yale.edu, Human Relations Area File. The article title is Romantic or Disgusting Passionate Kissing is Not a Human Universal.
So that is interestingly.
Go ahead.
Interestingly, kissing your baby is a human universe, but amorously kissing is not a human. I don't know why kissing your baby is a human universal. Like, it doesn't seem like it does anything more than just hugging your baby. But
so I think kissing serves a purpose when the baby is born, I think, and it might just have
what's the purpose?
Having something to do with the baby's lungs being full of fluid.
Oh, it's not like giving them CPR. It's like kissing them on the head.
Well, skin is skin, and pressing skin to skin is a thing. That's
true.
But that article was hyperlinked in the very first line of that thread.
Yeah.
The other hyperlink, although I recall, was when Keltham's crush was mentioned, and there is a hyperlink to the Glowfic where crush is introduced.
What's the name of that crush again, if you remember it?
The name, I think it had an M somewhere in it.
You're not helping me narrow it down.
No, I'm not.
Like, I just want to make sure, like, I don't accidentally spoil you if I know something. Oh, but wait, he brought this up when he was hanging out with Carissa. So I believe that's Marin?
Yes, Marin.
Okay, yeah. And I remember I followed that link, and then I realized it was somebody else writing Glowfic, and I went, yeah. I'll see if anyone recommends that one to me independently. And,
yes. That is
so,
the Glowfic community being incestuous.
It's nice to have friends.
I will not stand for it. That is.
Oh, but the third thing I wanted to say about the lectures, before we forget it, is that they often will bring up, like, he's given the lecture, and then he wants an example, and then the students tell him about something in the planet, and then they go on a digression, a thing that conversations can go down.
What?
About that for a while. And then, that's fine as, like, a story. But if you're, like, just give me the lecture. I need this in 5 bullet points. You can just take all that out.
All right. Well, I will continue trying to look for those bullet point summarizable lectures.
Sure. They're pretty.
Hopefully continue to reformat into chaptered sections.
Right. Okay.
With the calling the episode terminal point.
No, I don't think I'm in the same channel as them, but I've never been privy to any of their decisions or even know who it is.
Because I think I've asked, but I don't think I've gotten a response for advice or for help figuring out where we should end or what content we cover each episode. And what I'm going to go for, I think, a book at a time, which so far my quote-unquote books have been approximately as much content as the other podcast, which is somewhere around 35,000 words. But if we call them books, then that means hopefully we get some kind of satisfying cohesive theme, for one, and also that it will hopefully felt like we got enough to have something happen each episode. So that, because like you said, going through it slowly is not really how this consumed. And I don't know if I'll be able to commit the eps, but I think just the idea of having, for this particular episode, having fresh in mind a lot of content versus having forgotten last episode's stuff because it was so far away, but that's still being relevant this episode stuff. So I do want to try to get enough together that we can always feel like this happens.
Right.
But yeah, so as far as knowing what we're going to cover, I'm going to need advice. And I'm thinking probably in order for this to work, I probably will need to have read ahead to get the chapter break for the people following along at home. So we'll be delayed about a week there. But I won't. I shouldn't be like 2 weeks ahead, basically. When
Yeah,
we're
I don't think you'll have to be.
recording. And so that means, I think, if we're going to say, for next week's assignment, read up to here, I'm going to need, for having read that, have a good idea of what a good book stopping point, and hope then I can throw that section together and then put in the chapter titles as I read through it. Then it'll all be done by the time we get to episode. But
Yeah.
and a work in progress, and some people following along at home, the sausage, depending on.
There is always the possibility. I mean, first of all, we can sort of do it the conventional way, or even I can, sort of skim over and tell you where I think the ending should be, or other people could do that. Or we could do the episode, record the episode, and you could, you would have read up to that point. And then you would read up to the next point. And just before the episode goes out, you say the new end point at the end of the episode.
I think that's probably going to be the smoothest for the listeners, and least complicated on my part, probably. So that's a good idea.
Probably.
If you are okay thing together the last.
Yeah, that's pretty
cool. So something also to figure out is, where the hell is this going to be available?
That's true.
Where's this getting uploaded to? Will there be show notes? Do we have a website and or a Patreon for our -1 subscribers?
Yeah. So the way that it's been going so far is I've just been uploading them to YouTube. That obviously has the downside of it doesn't get into any of the podcatchers.
Right.
So I've been thinking about, I gotta arrange that, and just, there are services where you can just throw things up on the internet, and then...
Supposedly, I think Substack but
That's true, but I don't think it...
How to get Substack.
Like, that will let you upload audio, but when I've tried to say, like, give me the RSS feed Substack, it says no. So I don't know if it would actually publish your audio to, like, every other place on the internet where people get podcasts, which I assume is how people get their podcasts.
Right.
Typically. I don't really know, but...
Yeah, it feels weird to me that podcasts were named for the iPod, and yet I feel like Apple has really dropped the ball on getting the central market for podcasts going.
Yeah.
Like, RSS is really the way to go.
True.
Patreon also does personalized podcast feeds, so you can have them for different tiers, right? But I don't know if we can, what sort of investment that requires. We have to have more than -1 subscribers.
I imagine, first of all, I don't know if Patreon will allow you to just, like, hand out your RSS feed free. Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
They do.
Okay.
Because I have them for some of my podcasts.
Huh. Well, then that might be a two birds with one stone kind of situation.
Sorry. You're right. I don't know if they are allowed, let's say, to be publicly available. I know that they do have RSS feeds that you can get from a reader, but they may be customized to Patreon users, which means that people who don't like Patreon, which is more and more people day by day, will not be able to access it legitimately.
There are, websites where you can put up podcasts. It used to be a thing that took money, and then people realized that you could have sort of the YouTube model of putting things up on the internet as a podcast. And so now there are websites where they're like, yeah, just put your podcast up on our website. It costs us pennies to host this. You get 0 listeners. So I'll probably just use one of those. And then I also assume no one would give us money on Patreon, unless they become convinced by Keltham's ideology, and they think that they should be trading small amounts of money around constantly for every favor.
Only.
But I imagine that we would get like $5, and then it wouldn't really be worth the effort to set it up. But hey,
that of course is, for those listening at home, I'm sure the expression on your face says that's $5 total, not $5 a month. Right.
And it will be sent with a message that says, "Stop making the show."
It's Patreon has some interesting pricing models. Some of them can be $5 per episode not produced.
Yeah. And then that's having -1 patron right there.
Yep.
And then maybe I'll say this here, maybe I'll say this somewhere else. But hey, if you are a Kelthamite and you'd like to give us money for some reason, you can't consume a podcast unless you're giving us money. You have a hang up about that. Then just comment with a dollar amount, and then I'll mentally add those up. And if it gets somewhere significant, I will set up a Patreon.
That's a good idea.
Thanks.
I don't know if that is practically speaking a good idea, but that is a good idea in my head.
It's sort of like an honor system,
Yeah.
It's just testing the waters.
I am the sort of person who I set a value for media consumption. That value is $1 per hour. And this roughly aligns with how much I pay for audiobooks at Audible. And I am currently considering canceling. Oh, that's alliterative. Currently considering canceling Netflix because I don't feel like I'm getting $1 of entertainment for each $1 that I'm paying them every month. But that means also that but the other thing is I don't know how valuable having me listen to your sponsors and ads is.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm being abused when I have advertisements and commercials thrown at me. So I do not pay for commercialized content like that. But if they have a commercial-free feed that I can pay for, I will usually and I love doing that. And that actually, we might be able to. No, we're not big enough. Maybe one of my podcasts that I follow just migrated over to realm.fm.
Wow.
And I think that is one that is that hybrid ad / paid ad-free subscription thing. And it's a bundle. Podcasts have your cable packages. It's like you pay for one, you get 20 that you don't want to listen to.
I feel like probably it would on net destroy value in the universe if I added ads to this podcast.
If you added, yeah.
That's
fair.
Especially, I really dislike when there are podcasts that have ads in the middle. I'm like, oh no. At the sure, or even at the beginning, I can just go, well, I mean, you want to tell me about some stuff? Maybe I'll just skip by that. Fair is fair. But in the middle, it's terrible. And I imagine I would make like $2 total. It wouldn't even offset the $5. The other guy was negative paying us.
Right. The mid-roll podcast ads, the mid-podcast ads, really bother me nowadays because they're just sticking what are basically radio ads in the middle of the podcast, and those, they have like jingles and big wibbly wobbly wavy arms inflatable advertisement guy type annoying format versus I'm okay with the mid-story ads on like NPR because they just sort of pause for a moment and say, hey, we're sponsored by this. And it's in their same lovely, calm NPR voice. And they just let you know that this is a person who's giving them money and you should look at them. And I appreciate that. But that's not what we get nowadays with podcasts, unfortunately.
Maybe we could go the Sesame Street route and be sponsored by like the letter E.
That is a brilliant idea. I feel like we should pick sponsors from the story, though. Or make them up. Like, we are sponsored by Harry's Headbands. Providing all your magical headband needs.
We're sponsored by Keltham's Metallurgy Grotto. If you need some metal, boy, do we have metal, baby. Cheap steel.
Cheap steel. We should write some of these down. I like this idea.
We'll brainstorm them later.
Make up, whatever. We can be sponsored. We could say we're sponsored by the other podcast and then beg them for their Patreon money.
Another thing going into my calculation about whether or not a Patreon would be worth it is I think the other guys who had, in some ways, a much better podcast than I expect we'll have. In some ways, an equally good podcast. I don't think they really made any much significant money on their Patreon either.
I don't think anyone really does, but they also have a built-in following because...
Right, exactly.
First off, Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, and second off, they have another podcast that has Patreon subscribers already. So, having an established brand, let's say, is something that they have that we...
Sure. So anyhow, back to the original set of questions. This will probably be on YouTube. I'll probably figure out how to get it on the myriad of different podcasting services, even though I think you have to, you make your podcast, and then it doesn't even automatically go out to every podcast system in the world. You have to go to every podcast system in the world and say, hey, can I have my podcast on here? And they're like, yeah. So, which is annoying, but technology. And then, what were the other questions? Maybe a Patreon, if that's just the most convenient way to get an RSS feed, but I kind of doubt it will be. Or if some sort of extravagant person wants to give us money, who am I to say no? And then there isn't a website for this podcast. We just exist in the nether realm. We're in the deep web, so I suppose I could set one up, but I don't really feel like it for now. And then show notes. I'm not big on show notes. I think they're just kind of a waste of time. And usually, if you need to find something else that was mentioned on the podcast, you can just Google it. But
I think we should, at least for show notes, have a link to my lovely formatted version of this. So if there is a way to deliver show notes,
there is.
Aside from just saying, hey, go to the Discord for this other podcast, chat with us.
Everything has a description field, I've learned, because the people I was doing the rest of this podcast with wanted show notes, so I eventually had to wrangle show notes anyway, despite my opposition to them.
Okay, yeah, it looks like Patreon does not have public RSS, so nix that idea.
So, yeah, I guess our web home is really the YouTube channel.
Tentatively YouTube. All right.
Okay. And, sounds to me like you're getting tuckered out, and it's pumpkin time, so...
All right. That was 40 minutes ago I said that.
Yeah, so we can arrange details asynchronously.
Yeah. I am hopefully going to be out the majority of next week, which hopefully, as a vacation, will give me time to read ahead more. But that, or read back, either way, I might need a refresher. So if we can record what would be episode 13, which is episode 1, I think probably doing that after next week might be.
Okay.
Or if we can manage it this weekend, that'd be cool.
Sure, I'm down.
But that would be effectively 3 episodes, because we also want to do our story so far, which may or may not be episode length.
Mm-hmm.
We'll work something out. I'm gonna tentatively say let's hang out tomorrow.
Okay.
And we'll see.
All right.
Where to go from there. Cool. It's been very nice to meet you. And
it's been very nice to meet you too.
Good to hang out. See you around.
See you around.